Hi there, this is Andrew from laptopreviews.com, and I have here with me today the ThinkPad T430s, which is on the left-hand side, and then the new ThinkPad X1 Carbon here on the right-hand side. I just wanted to give a bit of a comparison between these two laptops because they are both 14-inch screen laptops, which is somewhat hard to believe if you give a look at the size of the X1 Carbon. It is significantly smaller in terms of height, just overall footprint size, and there's a few ways that they are able to achieve that. First of all, you can see that the bezel of the screen on the T430s is much thicker than the very narrow bezel that you get on the X1 Carbon. So obviously Lenovo has done everything that they can in order to reduce the size of the X1 Carbon overall. Also, if you look at the hinges on the T430s, the screen sort of sits on top of the keyboard area here, whereas on the X1 Carbon they are part of the actual back of the structure of the laptop. So that gives an overall lower profile. So if you're on, say, an airplane where you have not much room in front of you, it certainly helps to have that lower clearance and height that you get on the X1 Carbon. So let's just talk about the keyboard and touchpad a little bit on the T430s and the X1 Carbon. They are exactly the same keyboards, despite the fact that the X1 Carbon is so much thinner. The overall feel is exactly the same. It uses the 6-row chiclet keyboard design that Lenovo just rolled out on the ThinkPads this year. The one major difference you get is with the touchpad. So if we look at the touchpad here on the X1 Carbon, it's one giant glassy surface touchpad, and you can push down anywhere to register a click. So it's kind of like the click pad that you've probably seen on the MacBook series from Apple. If we move over to the T430s, the touchpad is much smaller, and it uses sort of this beveled surface, so it gives some texture to it. Your finger can still glide over it pretty easy, but it's certainly not as smooth feeling as the X1 Carbon touchpad. You also get dedicated buttons, which are nice, but to be honest, it might be nicer if they just made a larger touchpad for you here on the T430s, because in terms of surface area, the X1 Carbon is significantly more, up to 40% more than what you get with the T430s. You of course still get the red track point on both, and it's great to use for quickly moving the cursor across the screen. And you do get a fingerprint reader on the X1 Carbon. On mine, I do not have it. On the T430s, I don't have that configured, but I'm pretty sure that is an option you can get. So really, since the keyboards are exactly the same and they have that great ThinkPad feel, there's no particular advantage in regards to the keyboard itself, but the touchpad on the X1 Carbon is better than what you get on the T430. So another keyboard related feature that the X1 comes with standard is the backlit keyboard. So I have it turned up to the highest brightness here, and you can see that it does a great job of illuminating the keys, so it's easy to see in the dark. The T430s that I have, you have to pay extra for that backlight option. By default, it has the ThinkLight above the keyboard. You can see it does a pretty good job of illuminating the keyboard here in the middle, but up to the left and to the right where the light doesn't quite fall, it's a little harder to see the keys. So overall, the backlight is superior, and it's a nice standard feature to get on the X1 Carbon. So another thing certainly worth talking about in comparing these two laptops, the ThinkPad T430s here is on the left and the X1 Carbon is on the right. I've covered up the Windows key here. So the ThinkPad T430s has a removable battery right here. You can access things like the memory and wireless card to upgrade that right here. And then you have a docking station connector here. So it's very upgradable, easy to replace the battery, upgrade battery. You can also access the hard drive over on this side. Meanwhile, over on the ThinkPad X1 Carbon, if you wanted to take off the bottom here, you'd have to unscrew about 6 screws here, and then even when you get in there, it's a little dicey as to making upgrades. It's just not going to be as easy, and there is no docking connector, and there's no ability to upgrade the battery. So the trade-off in getting the thinner and lighter system is certainly, you know, the inability to do upgrades. Now there's certain things you would expect to have on a ThinkPad, so that's just one of those things as a buyer you would have to decide which is more important for you. So as I said, though, this video is mostly about just comparing the things like the form factor, size, and tangible things like that, but be remiss not to talk a little bit about performance. So the benefit of the T430s is the fact you can get a regular voltage processor, so you can get a 3rd generation Intel Core i7 3520M, so it's full voltage, whereas on the X1 Carbon, the processor choices that you see here on the specs page are they're all undervolted, either Core i5 or Core i7 processors, which I think for most business users that's not a really big deal. You'll still be able to multitask and do basically anything you need to do in a business working scenario. However, if you do a lot of stuff like video processing or run some demanding 3D applications such as CAD, then it could be a kind of challenge to do that with these processors. The other thing to mention is that you do get a fast SSD on the X1 Carbon, which certainly helps boot up times and just application load times. That is not standard on the T430s, but it is an option. You can get 128 gigabyte SSD, though it is pricey to configure it with that. You can get up to 8 gigabytes of RAM in the X1 Carbon. The T430s, you can get up to 16 gigabytes, so a slight advantage there. I do think for most people, though, that are going to be purchasing these systems, the overall performance isn't going to be a big deal unless you're kind of in the fringe and need the latest and greatest and fastest components. The X1 Carbon should serve you well with even the undervolted processor. So, but if you were to benchmark these and you were to have an SSD in the T430s, it would be able to outperform the ThinkPad X1 Carbon.